I'm one of the founders of Neuron Learning, and these are my contact details if you'd like to contact me after the webinar. And tonight we're going to talk about back to school blues. And for some kids are delighted to be going back to school, looking forward to meeting their new teachers and getting back with their pals and everything else. But some kids are not looking forward to going back to school, or not happy that they're back at school, because school can be really challenging for some kids. And we're going to look at why it can be difficult for some children to learn to read and to listen in class, and to learn generally. We'll start with the learning timeline. We start by listening in class, and we have to understand what we're listening to. So we'll talk about how difficult it is for some children to listen in class and to understand what it is that they're listening to. We'll talk about speech and storytelling, reading comprehension, writing, and learning. So this is what we call the learning timeline. Now, to do everything on the learning timeline, you have to have good memory, attention, processing, and sequencing. And we're going to start by talking about processing speed and processing accuracy, and then how memory and attention and sequencing are also necessary for everything on that learning timeline. But to start with, I'm going to start with a little exercise, and I would ask you to do this exercise without using your pen and paper. If you can do it in your head, that would be great. And it's a code. So this boy has a name, and I want you to try and figure out what his name is using these numbers. And I'll give you a little hint. So you've got the alphabet there to work on. Okay, so let's talk about listening. To listen in class, a child has to process what's being said as it's being said. And he has to be able to engage his working memory to absorb what is being said and remember it. But to process it, he must have good processing skills. His processing must be fast enough to get everything that's been said. And also, he needs processing accuracy. So some kids may, if there's a delay in their processing, they may misinterpret words. So for example, if we take a very simple word like say, between the time the child processes the S sound and the A sound, even if there's 100th of a millisecond of a delay between those two sounds, it may seem to him like another sound has been inserted. So he might register stay or spay, and he goes off on a little tangent, thinking the teacher is talking about X, when in fact the teacher is talking about Y. And by the time he comes back to the teacher, he's lost his place. So he's not only struggling with the processing of what's being said, he's also now lost concentration because he's lost his place in class. If he's not getting what's being said, he's not going to be able to remember it. So his memory is now a problem. So his working memory, especially while he's listening, is a problem. So right now, while all of you are listening to me, you're engaging your working memory to take in what I'm saying. Now, we need good processing as well to predict where the conversation is going or where the lesson is going. So right now, whether you realize it or not, you're trying to figure out where I'm going with this conversation. And that means that you're one step ahead of me. But students who are struggling with processing, they could be 1-2 steps behind the speaker. So they're not able to predict where the lesson is going or where the conversation is going. And that can impact their ability to get the nuances or the inferences or the subtleties in language. So we have to build up that processing speed and processing accuracy. We also need good sequencing skills for listening. So it is not unusual in class for a teacher to give instructions. So a teacher might say to the children, okay, everyone take out your geography book, open page 10, read page 10, and answer questions 2, 3, and 4 on page 11. Well, for a child who is struggling to process that and remember the instruction and sequence it, that's going to be a very difficult instruction to take in. So he's going to wonder what book, what page, what questions. Meanwhile, all the other kids in the class have page 10 open, they're reading the text and they're answering the questions on page 11. So to take instruction, we need good processing, good sequencing, good working memory to absorb that instruction and keep it in our heads until we carry it out. And we need good concentration to carry out that instruction. So there is a lot going on for a child to listen and to understand and remember what's being said. So we need good cognitive skills for listening comprehension. But we also need good concentration. It's not good enough for children to concentrate for 5 minutes. We have to help them to concentrate for the whole class or the whole day. So they need sustained attention and endurance to stay with the teacher until the end of the lesson. As children progress through primary school, towards the end of primary school, 80% of what they do at school is listen. And in secondary school, 80% of what they do is listen. And in secondary school, while they're listening, they are very often expected to take notes as well. So writing and listening at the same time can be extremely difficult, especially if you're not taking all the information in or you're not getting it accurately and you're not able to remember it. So listening can be a big problem for kids in school. We started off with this little exercise to exercise the working memory, and I showed you the alphabet. So the code here is the 12th letter in the alphabet is L, the 21st letter is U, the 3rd letter is C, and the 1st letter in the alphabet is A. So this little man's name is Luca. Now, when you were processing the information, you were working out, well, which letter it was. It was the 12th letter L and then the 21st letter U. So you held this bit of information in your head while you were trying to process this bit of information, and then you held those 2 pieces of information in your head while you processed the last 2 bits of information. So you were engaging your working memory. And the working memory is not only the memory we use in the moment to remember what it is that we're listening to. So right now, you're engaging your working memory to take in what I'm saying to you, but it's also the memory we use to manipulate information in our heads. So to work out this student's name, we were manipulating different pieces of information in our head. And we need that for things like mental arithmetic, times tables, where we're working with more than 1 or 2 pieces of information at the same time in our heads. Speech and storytelling. So speech, again, we need good processing skills to process our thoughts. We need to sequence those thoughts. We need to structure our sentences with a beginning, middle, and an end as we want to use. And we've also got to think of the grammar. So speech can be quite tricky if a child is struggling to process and sequence. Storytelling, very often kids might pause, and it's, parents say it's like they're trying to buy time, or they and while they buy time to think of what they want to say or to try and retrieve a word that they want to use. So the storytelling, we need good cognitive skills to structure the story with a beginning, middle, and an end. A lot of parents, say to us that they have to remind their child to start the story from the beginning. Sometimes kids can start the story in the middle and they have to go back and find out, well, who are you talking about? What are you talking about? Or some kids might struggle in groups, in conversations, in social communications and negotiations. Because if we take an example like a child in a playground where there's a lot of background noise, especially the school playground, and the child is trying to take part in a conversation with his friends, and one of the friends is talking about something like what he did last weekend, and then child number 2 starts talking, but he hasn't quite got what child number 1 was saying, and then child number 3 starts talking, and he's still processing what child number 2 said, and he's not getting what child number 3 said either. So, and at the same time, he's trying to figure out what he's going to contribute to the conversation. And his response might be off point because he didn't get exactly what the others were saying. Or if they were planning rules of the game, he may not have got or processed all of the rules. And so he may find it difficult to obey those rules because he hasn't absorbed them or he hasn't processed them. And sometimes kids can get quite frustrated and demand that the game is played according to their rules because it's easier to obey the rules in their head. So speech and storytelling need good cognitive skills, and kids can really struggle socially as far as communications are concerned and negotiations are concerned if their cognitive skills aren't as good as they should be. And it can lead sometimes to bad behavior, and it can lead to frustration. Okay, I'm just trying to change my screen here for the next. Okay, so if we talk about reading, there are 3 parts to reading. There's decoding and comprehension, and there's fluency. If we start with decoding, in order to decode, we need to know the code. And unfortunately, in English, English is not a transparent language and it's not a phonetic language. And so it can be very difficult for children to get the code and to learn the code. And we start off by learning the sounds, so the sounds of the alphabet or blended sounds or initial consonant sounds or final consonant sounds. But sometimes children, if their processing isn't as good as it should be, it means that they may not get the sounds or the differences between sounds. And if we take our vowel sounds, for example, a, e, a, o, they all sound very alike. And it can be really tricky for kids to register the difference between them. If we take sounds like B and D, a lot of children mix those sounds up because they too are very alike, and the symbols that represent those sounds are very alike. So kids often mix those sounds up. Now, a lot of the rules, the kids have to learn the rules that break the rules. So very early on, they, in spellings, for example, with the silent E at the end of the word, the preceding vowel sound can be affected. So in a word like rope, that O sound, because there's an E at the end, it has that O sound. If we take a word like mop, it has no E, and so the O sound is ah. But if we take a word like come, C-O-M-E, or some, S-O-M-E, well, that doesn't have an O sound or an ah sound. It has an oh sound. So if you're trying to make sense of how to spell or decode a word, it can be really difficult to sound it out because that one symbol could have 3 different sounds. So learning the code can be really difficult. So we have to build up cognitive skills so kids can process the code and learn the code. They can access the code, learn it, and decode. Now, kids have to be able to decode quickly enough to engage the working memory to absorb what it is that they're decoding. And that leads to comprehension. So here we see the text, and if we see a word like cat, C-A-T, or cat, just one second, sorry. So if they see the word cat, you can't see it here on my screen, but the word is cat. So they have to visually process that. They have to see the letters. Then they have to process the sounds within the word, C-A-T, cat. And then they transfer that to the working memory so they can absorb it and understand what that word is and match that word to a picture in their head, which is the cat. So there's a lot going on from just making out the word to matching that word to the picture of a cat in their minds. So we have to visually process it, phonologically process it in order to decode it, but we have to do it quickly. And we have to engage our working memory to absorb the meaning of the word and match it to the picture. And so reading, the bridge between decoding and comprehension is fluency. We have to build up the fluency, which is the automaticity of decoding. Because if a child spends too long decoding the code, the focus goes into the decoding and not into the absorption of the meaning of the word. So if a child spends more than 5 or 6 seconds decoding a word, it's too long. And the child then risks not understanding what the word is. Or parents often say to us, he spent ages trying to make out the word, and then 2 sentences later, he saw the same word, and it was like he never saw it before. And that can be down to taking too long to decode the code. And I often give the example to parents. It's like reading an article in the paper, and you read every single word, and when you get to the end of the article, you think maybe you were thinking about something else. You've read every single word, but you've taken nothing in, and you have to read it again. And it's like that for decoding. If you're not doing it quickly enough and you're not engaging the working memory to absorb the meaning of what you're reading, then you won't understand, you won't comprehend what you're reading. Now, as we progress through school, children from 3rd grade or 3rd class or year 4 in the British system, from 3rd class or year 4 on, the curriculum cranks up a few notches, and up to that point, teachers use a lot of visual props to help children understand what it is that they're teaching them. But at that point, at about 8.5 years of age, there's a shift, and there's a lot more listening in class. And for reading the books, the text in the school books and the textbooks becomes denser, fewer pictures are used. So a lot of kids, if they've been using pictures to help them understand what it is that they're reading, that can let them down as they grow older and towards the end of primary school. And towards the end of primary school, they're beginning to read to learn. In secondary school, they're reading to learn. In the earlier years in primary school, they're learning to read. So it's important that the reading and the reading comprehension are accomplished so that they can access what's going on in school, in secondary school. Writing is a bit like speech. You have to process your thoughts, you have to sequence your thoughts, you have to structure your sentences with a beginning, middle, and an end, and you have to now think of the spellings and the grammar and the punctuation. And if that isn't happening automatically, it can be really difficult for kids to put their thoughts down on paper and to answer questions. It can be a big problem in maths, for example, if you don't understand the written question and then you're trying to write the answer, but you don't really know the question. In any other subject, writing, it can be slower because you can't think quickly, you can't think of the spellings or the grammar or the punctuation. You have to be able to engage the cognitive skills to learn the spellings and to access the grammar and the punctuation. Now, Grammar, for example, needs good processing, and it also needs good sequencing for, it's like the morphology of grammar, the changing of words, or the bits you add on to the beginning or the end of words for prefixes or suffixes. And those beginnings or those endings can change the meaning of the word. And so learning grammar can be quite difficult for a lot of children if they've got sequencing issues, again, if they've processing issues and working memory issues. And punctuation is the same. When do they add a comma? When do they put in the full stop? When do they use an exclamation mark, and so on? Now, at Neuron Learning, we use 2 programs, Fast Forward and Reading Assistant Plus. Now, Fast Forward works on building up those cognitive skills, but also, a huge emphasis is put into the attention, the processing, the memory, and the sequencing and verbal reasoning. But at the same time, the program works on phonological awareness, decoding, vocabulary acquisition, and language structures. Reading Assistant Plus, there are 3 parts to Reading Assistant Plus. The student listens to a model reader and then reads himself and is recorded, and then works on a comprehension section. This program is about building up vocabulary, pronunciation, fluency, and comprehension. But we'll talk more about those another time, and we can go into more detail about Fast Forward and Reading Assistant Plus at a later date. So in summary, we need good memory, attention, processing, and sequencing for everything on that learning timeline, so students can listen and understand what they're listening to, so they can communicate fluently and fluidly and have better social interactions and negotiations, and also tell stories and answer questions in class. We need those skills, as I said, for reading comprehension, and writing and learning. So these are my contact details again, if any of you would like to contact me after. And we're happy to take questions now if anyone has questions.
Joyce, there was one question came in there came directly to me, asking about what to do if a child has fallen behind in their reading. Is there any chance to catch up? And the child is 12 years old, I think, just going into secondary.
Okay, yeah, you can catch up, absolutely. And our goal would be to help students to bridge the gap between where they are and where they should be. But we need to build up the cognitive skills to help them access material. So let's say they're 2 years behind in their reading and they're going into first year, they're going into year 7 and being in the British system. It means that they're accessing that material at 5th class level or year 6 level, and that can be very challenging. So we need to build up the cognitive skills, and then we would work on from the reading level that they're at. So we would do a test at the very beginning to see where the reading is, and we would test their reading comprehension, phonological awareness, decoding, and vocabulary. And our goal then would be to work to try and bridge the gap between where they are and where they need to be. So we would hope that they would end up at the level of their peers. Now, expectations have to be realistic. So, if a child is 4 years behind, we would hope to bridge the gap, but that child may only improve by 2 or 3 years, but we do see big improvements, and it means that they can access what they're doing in secondary school far more effectively having worked on the interventions, because what's happening is when they're working on the exercises, they're through the exercises, they're stimulating the parts of the brain that are responsible for learning. And the neurons in the brain are firing, and those neurons are making new connections. And through the intensity and the frequency of the work that they do, those connections become stronger and stronger. And so they become more, they are more able to learn more effectively. So absolutely, yeah, we can.
Saba has another question here. She's asking, can the program be taken individually or via school? Which provides.
Yeah. So we work with private students, and that can parents can implement the program at home with their kids, or just supervise their kids while they're working on it, and maybe do interventions if necessary. And schools also can use the program. They can take on licenses for a number of children at a time, and teachers can supervise up to 5 kids at a time. So those.
Oh, there's another question came in directly there to me saying, asking about cognitive skills, and are cognitive skills taught in the classroom now?
Okay, so it's not like you can teach a cognitive skill. It's not like you can teach a child how to process or how to concentrate. You can draw a child's attention to the fact that he's not concentrating, but you can't teach him to concentrate. So the exercises are especially created or designed to build up students' concentration, endurance, and sustained attention, and also by doing that, improving accuracy. So there is a huge emphasis in the program on building up cognitive skills, but it's not, and that's one of the reasons that this program Fast Forward was developed. It's not so easy to it's the only, as far as I know, it's the only program that works on both cognitive skills and language and reading.
There's another question related to that, comparing, for example, what does toe-to-toe do, a program like that, versus something like Fast Forward?
Okay, so Toe by Toe is a great program, but it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. You need good cognitive skills to be able to access what's going on in Toe by Toe. So we find that Fast Forward is an excellent initial intervention, and then and it makes accessing what resource teachers are doing or tutors are doing with them, if they're getting extra tuition at school or extra resource at school. And also it helps them access programs like Toe by Toe more effectively, because they're more able to process what they're working on in Toe by Toe, and they're able to remember it. Now, a lot of kids who are struggling, these cognitive skills, a lot of kids who are struggling, they may have diagnosis of dyslexia or auditory processing disorder or ADD, or they might be on the autistic spectrum, or they may have no diagnosis. Parents often contact us and they say, we just know our child is struggling. And, when we dig deeper and we ask questions about what areas are they struggling in, and very often they might be doing Toe by Toe, and it's, as I say, it is an excellent intervention, but it would be even better if kids could work on building up their cognitive skills before accessing something like Toe by Toe.
Okay, very good. Somebody just asked a question there. How can comprehension be improved?
Okay.
In general, I guess.
Okay, so comprehension. Comprehension can, in order to let's say reading, there are two types of comprehension. There's listening comprehension and reading comprehension. So let's take the reading. Good reading comprehension, you have to be able to decode what it is that you're reading. You've got to be able to engage your working memory. So you're absorbing what you're reading, you're understanding what you're reading, and you're comprehending it. For listening comprehension, again, you need to be able to keep up with the teacher, what the teacher is saying, understand what the teacher is saying, take instructions from the teacher or take instructions from anyone at home or whatever. But you need to be able to engage the working memory to be able to absorb that and understand it. And that, so it's all down to good cognitive skills, and as far as reading is concerned, good decoding and fluency.
Okay, so this lady says like her child can follow an instruction of, you know, if she tells him something simple to do, but if he gets 2 or 3 instructions, it doesn't get done. And she's wondering, is that a comprehension issue or memory or what?
Okay, so following instructions is again, you know, if let's say a child is asked to go upstairs, put on his school jumper, brush his teeth and bring down mum's handbag, all right? So he has to process what he's been asked to do. He has to concentrate then from the time that instruction was given to the time he goes upstairs, he goes into his bedroom, he opens the cupboard, he takes out his jumper, he puts it on, he goes into the bathroom, he brushes his teeth, he leaves the bathroom, he goes into mum's bedroom, he gets her handbag, he brings it down. So there he's had to concentrate all that time. He processed the information initially, he sequenced it, he had to go into his bedroom, then the bathroom, then mum's bedroom, and he had to remember all of it and bring it downstairs. So a lot of parents say that they need to repeat instructions all the time because kids can't take in more than 1 or 2 pieces of information, or they deliver instructions in very bite-sized pieces. So they might just give 1 instruction at a time, or as the child is going up the stairs, they're repeating another part of the instruction. Or kids might come down and say, I forgot what you asked me to do, or they might get distracted in the middle of it. So again, it's down to the cognitive skills, getting instructions and being able to follow it through. And sometimes kids might give the impression that they're not bothered, or they're not bothered to listen. Or sometimes parents might say, you know, he's lazy and he won't do it. But it can be down to the fact that they didn't get the instruction in the first place. And we do a lot of work on that, building up the child's ability to improve on his working memory so he can get 1, 2, 3, 4 elements to an instruction. In fact, it goes up as far as 8 elements to an instruction in one of the exercises, in one of the very early exercises. So building on that working memory, building from 1, 2 pieces of information and building up and up and up until he's able to get 8 elements to an instruction. So following instruction can be really difficult. And of course, in secondary school especially, a lot of the day is listening to instructions and listening to lessons. You know?
Very good. Okay, very good. I think that's about it. We've gone over the half hour, and we said we'd keep it to about half an hour. So if anybody has any more questions, they can email you, Joyce, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My email is here. We're sending out a recording of this. And also we will talk more about the programs in a later webinar. So if anyone wants to join us then, please do. And also if anybody, you know, wants to contact me to talk about their own children and, you know, the difficulties their children are having, you know, feel free to do so. My contact details are here. Okay.
All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and I hope it was valuable to you. And please do come back if we can help you in any way. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.